Hey there everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Snoo here, hope you're doing well. We're around a week and a half into the early access 0.2 of PoE2, which means I suspect it's time for several of you to start thinking about spicing up your build with some added player power available through those really awesome unique jewels that are currently in the game. I noticed the market began to get flooded with some of these. Not all of them are good, so several of them are really expensive. But with that said, there were no changes to jewels in particular. There were a lot of changes, however, to the passive tree that are going to greatly affect how we are using jewels this time around. This is especially true for all the different wheels, new notables that were added, and the jewel slots themselves. Many jewel slots removed, and some of them were moved to different locations. Some of my favorite particular jewel slots have been deleted effectively. So I had to go out of my way to start learning where I'm going to slot these jewels in and exactly which ones I'm going to use where. So hopefully this video will serve as a resource for you on that end, especially if you're playing the Huntress class. That is going to be a nice window into some different powerful options you have there. But even still, just being familiar with all the different jewel options, you can take that information and apply it to your build, hopefully in a really intelligent way, and it'll just serve you better in the future. Feel free to use the timestamps down below to fast forward to whichever jewel you're interested in looking at. But at any rate, we're going to get started by showing you in-game a little teaser here with the Amazon. This is my build as it currently stands. I'm changing it a lot. And by the way, I do have, build guide link down below with a macro link, but it will not necessarily be updated with exactly what you see here. And that's because I'm changing it all the time, every day. Let me show you what I have selected here with this particular jewel, which is not unique. So I guess we could call this an honorable mention. But right off the bat, the first jewel slot that we have available for the Amazon is this one right here. And it so happens to be in proximity to several very nice notables here. Some for power, some for defense, some for other things, poison, movement speed, crit, that sort of thing. And you can see I'm fitting inside this little radius here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I actually usually have 5. And now this jewel, what it does is, first of all, the radius can be expanded. It's only medium. It can either be small, medium, or large. In this case, medium is a really good route to go. Increase effect of notables in passive skills in radius, with those notables, the same notables, also granting increased projectile speed and increased attack speed. This isn't by any means the absolute best one you could have, but it is a very, very nice jewel. And so if I remove this, you will see that these notables are like they normally are. They have the affixes that you would normally see. However, now you'll see that those affixes are increased by 23%, including these crit multi bonuses. And then they also have tethered to them the extra projectile and attack speed. And so this makes for a more powerful option than just a typical generic emerald that would have some of the similar stats, but it can't quite compete with what I've done here. All this to say, if you are running a Huntress, highly recommend that you consider running a time-lost jewel in this slot rather than just a generic jewel. But don't worry, there are several other things you can do with the slot as well. Now, I don't want to restrict you with just seeing the content that I have here and trying to just somehow make sense of everything. I want to give you the tools so that you can do it yourself. Everything you're about to see in the rest of this video is done through Path of Building. The Path of Building community has forks for PoE2 and PoE1. Several people of our community here are already familiar with POB for short, and it is an incredibly valuable resource. I think many people would argue the most important resource in Path of Exile. Now, it's a community effort, and it's not totally updated for PoE2. There are definitely a lot of things that are missing, and you're going to see that in this video, but the primary functionality of it, for the sake of this video, works, and that is understanding the passive tree, getting a sense of the radius of several of these jewels, and just being able to theory craft which jewels you want and where and why. So if you want to get this resource, all you got to do is click here, download it, and then open it up, and then you're well on your way. What you'll see then will be this screen right here. Now this is an Amazon, as you can see, and I basically stripped my own build down to the most conventional setup that virtually everyone would be running. I did this on purpose because if you're playing an Amazon, you're probably at the very least taking these exact points. I have several passive points to spare, and of course I do other things with this as well, as you already saw earlier. But I have 2 jewel slots that I think virtually everyone running an Amazon would have. And most people will have either 3 or 4, and we're going to now start taking a look at some of those options. We already visited the time lost emerald slot, and you can see here that I populated it up. The way I did that is I went into craft item, radius, time lost jewel. I had to go in and select these things, and then I can create it and I can give it some of the affixes I want. Several of them are missing. If you'd like a more reliable resource on what the affixes are available, this doesn't show the weightings, but this is, I believe, 100% correct. PoE2DB is another great resource, and this one has been extremely reliable in giving us several other pieces of information, including modifiers, affixes to different gear pieces. This is what you would see on emeralds in general, and the time lost emeralds would be the same. So back into Path of Building we go. I'm going to go back to the tree here, and you can see the radius matches up with what you saw before. Sometimes you can increase the effect of the modifiers, sometimes increase the effect of the notables themselves. There are different affixes for different things, and a time lost emerald especially is going to be a great option here. You might take escape velocity, you might take freedom of movement, you might take several other things that I'm not taking yet currently. In many cases, these notables right around this spot are valuable whether you have a special jewel in there or not. Over here up the top, we have another option, so we'll populate this one. In this case, a large radius jewel might work pretty well, as we get one of the very best critical strike wheels for attacks. Up here, we also got 2 max frenzy charges. I'm honestly quite jealous of monks this time around. This particular wheel got moved. This is one change that took place to the passive tree, as this got shoved upward and now is in range with the quarterstaff wheel. So massively jealous of you guys running monk. You get even better access. And yeah, just look at that. That's incredible. Now we're going to get to some of the unique jewel options. We're going to start with, naturally, the other time lost jewel that is unique. Okay, by the way, in PoE I had to go in and manually edit this jewel that I had here so that it would be of a small radius. I had to go in and edit this line to type in small. So again, not working 100% correct because this jewel was nerfed. It's still the same jewel, but it was nerfed in terms of radius. And so now it does not affect fervor. It only affects inside the crit wheel and then some of the quarterstaff ones, and I don't even think it gets stupefy over here. Now the Against the Darkness is still a very, very powerful jewel. And you can see the affixes on here right now aren't very good because it's just naturally populated, but you have damage gained is extra cold, fire, and or lightning. You got max elemental res, you got life, you got spirit, probably the biggest, most important one. There are percent attributes for anyone who's still attribute stacking. A lot of very powerful options there. It's going to be harder to make great use of this jewel as it was last time around because the radius, I believe, used to be large. And now it's just small. Or maybe it was medium before, I can't remember. But now it's just small, so not quite as good, but especially for spirit users, people who are hungry on spirit, a great way to get some extra. You don't have to put it down just there. You can also put it right here. Now, you can only have one of them, so I should probably go in and delete this not to confuse anybody. It does have a limit of 1, but it can still be used with other rare time lost jewels. I suggested a rare one here. That's what I'm doing. But if you wanted to, you could put the unique one here. And you got Catalysis, Deft Recovery, Escape Velocity, and Freedom of Movement would be generically good options there. But you can see that Stand and Deliver, Death from Afar, and Cooked are all just out of range, so losing some value, I'd say. Not a bad place if you need specifically 4 very easy access notables for whatever you're doing there. With the radius of Against the Darkness being small, one of the most powerful places you could put it is right here. And a lot of people are going up here if they're doing especially things with Energy Shield, Spectral Ward, if they're going up for CI, if they're going down here, doing whatever. A lot of Amazon builds are moving their way up this way. But I mean, you could technically just go absolutely nuts and take, I guess, up to 8 notables in range. Relatively short distance. Now, I wouldn't personally do this, but some of these are quite valuable. But if for whatever reason you needed 8 notables in a small radius, you do have it right here. That's going to conclude the Against the Darkness section, and we're going to go over to Controlled Metamorphosis, another very interesting radius-oriented jewel. There are so many different ring sizes, and so this is where, you know, having the resource to plug these in and see if it fits in the range where you're looking is honestly kind of necessary. Let's zoom in here so we can see what's going on. I am back to the original spot, and you know what? Early on, for a hot second there, I was running this setup because I got to save points, because this one allows you to allocate any point inside the ring without even connecting it, unlike the other jewels that I showed earlier. We have an interesting crit wheel here for presence related, very strong attack speed one here, especially for my build. Trick shot's not going to be very good for me. If you're playing lightning pen would be really good here. Excellent notable that's kind of far away. Decent travel zones, but again, kind of costly on points. Primal Sundering is really good for anyone playing Lightning Spear for sure. And then down here, we even got some really powerful freeze threshold enhancement. Get a little bit of companion stuff. And I'm not sure I'd take wasting, but that is down there as well. So a lot of notables are in range here, and you could get quite a bit of value out of this. I'm not currently running this now, but I do recognize the power that it gives. It's just that it's so good for the time lost jewel that I decided to do that instead. Don't worry though, I'm going to take you back up here to show you a couple other metamorphoses. Let's look at a massive wheel right here. Running lightning damage, Wild Storm's one of the best notables. Kind of costly for points to go all the way over here, but 15% more lightning damage is pretty crazy. Shadow Dancing isn't bad too. You can get Deadly Force, get a little extra crit without even going up there if you wanted. Also this notable here. And Immaterial's almost in range, but not quite. Not some great points there. Decent physical and a crit damage bonus right here. Stun buildup. Not a bad ring by any stretch of the imagination, if you are lightning especially. Looking at a different radius, another great option that I noticed was this one right here. This is a medium large, okay? If you were to path up here more conventionally, take advantage of all that crit, you could save 1 point here. If you wanted, you can get Finesse, which is going to be really good for Amazons right there. And then Kite Runner is also going to be great too. Oh yeah, and Conservative Casting is honestly not bad either. That's some decent mana regen and reduction to mana cost skills. So if you're having problems with mana cost, it can be pretty nice. Now I'm doing something quite a bit different with my build. I've been experimenting going down this way. I don't really see anything great to use on this slot for Metamorphosis or Time Lost Jewels. However, if I go all the way down here, check this out. On a massive wheel, Instant Leech Keystone, pretty good. Some of these bottom notables are really good if you're an Area of Effect build, which certainly am. Doing Twister, Barrage cooldown effect is nice. Area of Effect is still good for Lightning Spear as well. We got some nice blind and attack speed stuff here too. If you for whatever reason you wanted reduced projectile speed, this is one of the few places to get it. There we have some gain threshold or gain stun or ailment threshold, depending on what kind of stats you're doing. Probably not useful unless you are getting some armor on your gear. Defiance, 120% increased armor and evasion on low life could be really clutch for sure. I suppose I should mention another reason why you might go down this way is because you do have some pretty good access to some points with this way, and you know this is kind of a little bit of a setup that I've been running. I haven't actually gone all the way into this area here with a Metamorphosis jewel, but I've done everything but this so far. Next up, we'll take a look at the From Nothing jewel. Now, things start to get pretty interesting here. We got From Nothing, and the nice thing is, in this resource, they have one that auto-populates with every single keystone. What this does is, kind of like Metamorphosis, allows you to allocate points without them being connected, and it basically just takes you from one end of the tree to a totally different place. I put this jewel right here, and if it is set for acrobatics, it means I can put a point here if I want. I can put it here if I want. I could delete all these and just put 2 here. In Heartbreaking, probably wouldn't do that, but yeah, that's just what I can do. Now, I think there are 3 different keystones that seem particularly strong for the Amazon. Well, 2 generically, and then maybe 1 or 2 in my case, especially if you're running kind of a life-based build. The best generic case use, I think, is definitely going to be Heartstopper this time around, and I bet a lot of you weren't even really aware of what this had to offer. So, again, a From Nothing and a Heartstopper will get you First Approach, which is incredibly good for mapping. It'll get you Pocket Sand. That is really strong, especially for Amazon, whose damage is somewhat in part determined by how likely they are to hit an enemy. This reduces their evasion as well as effectively increases yours. We have Electrotherapy in case you just want a skill speed, or especially if you're doing anything electrocution related. We have a brand new wheel here with the double accuracy wheels. Again, for Amazon, 60% increased accuracy at close range and 30% reduced penalty of accuracy rating at range. This is a very unique notable right here. We also have Mental Toughness, which is, I think, the biggest reduction in mana cost that you're going to see on one notable. And if you're running cold or lightning, especially cold, you got Storm Swell for a lot of elemental pen there. About the only one that's not good for most generic builds would be Low Tolerance, but hey, there are even poison builds out there that might want that one as well. So that is definitely a sight to behold. That's a really, really nice one. But let's see what some of the other options have to offer. Last time around, monks especially were going all the way over here and getting resonance, in some cases allocating resonance keystone, but quite often pairing this up with other things, doing a lot of stuff over here. If you just take the resonance one, you get some quick and easy access to crit. You could take all the small nodes too, by the way, if you wanted. But you also have, access to this one here if you're physical. If you're anything chaos related, a lot of great points here. Spaghettification was nerfed pretty hard, but it's still quite good, especially that it has some movement speed. And so yeah, that's a pretty nice option too. Mind over matter is still pretty decent for anyone running a hit-based or crit-based elemental damage build. Could be caster or attack. You have some options there. We got a nice arcane surge option, especially for casters. And yeah, I think definitely favors casters more than attacks, but I have thought about taking this one even for an attack-based build. Here's a very interesting one that would be good for the build I'm running as a life-based, crit-based twister build, which heavily favors skill effect duration, area of effect cooldown, that sort of thing. We have unbending, which is great for stun threshold and life. We have area of effect if you stunned an enemy recently. Twisters do physical damage, so stun happens quite frequently. Honestly, this is likely to be the most powerful crit notable in the game for Amazon. And then we have 3 separate very strong skill effect duration nodes here. I'm heavily considering this one. Maybe not necessarily breaking blows, but yeah, for sure, at least these 3. These 3 is the main component. In my opinion, if you can get at least 3 very valuable notables, it's worth using this jewel for that slot, if nothing else. We have a really interesting one here for defensive purposes. You could take Unwavering Stance and then allocate Bulwark for 30% less damage taken while dodge rolling. And that is a lot of less damage taken. Certainly it requires you to be proactive, but it is 100% reliable. You can just spam, just hold down space bar if that's your hotkey, and you can just spam dodge roll. And you could even use this to learn fights. Honestly, it would be kind of nice to face pinnacle bosses the first time without really focusing on trying to kill them, and just learn the fight just by dodge rolling everywhere, and taking 30% less damage the whole time would make you more likely to survive that process. Also over here, we got another one that's pretty crazy. Finality, 120% increased damage with hits against enemies that are on low life. That's enemy that is below a 35% life threshold. Does make you take increased damage while in low life as well. Yeah, and then as far as like Amazon stuff, not really anything else here involved. The primary purpose would be to get Bulwark. All right, conversely, we have the option to take the Bulwark version, and then you can never be light stunned because you could allocate Unwavering Stance. And yeah, just to be clear, you cannot allocate the same keystone that the From Nothing jewel is for. You can allocate another keystone if it happens to be in range, and I think these two are the only single case of that being true. Also, if you take Bulwark, you get Push the Advantage, 40% crit multi, which is going to be very strong as well. And possibly hefty unit, but likely to be nothing else there. If you've made it this far into the video, I'm going to give you a cool little insight on something I'm doing, since I kind of already divulged an interesting idea for defense here. I am definitely contemplating taking Bulwark and doing something like this with that Metamorphosis slot, or maybe not even going up there and instead going about it this way. Okay, you could just path straight up there, get the Val Pact and Bulwark. Instant Leech plus 30% less damage taken. You could manually take these. Of course, you would probably take all these. And this is a decent setup too. Conversely, you could get an extra jewel slot here. Okay, you do something like this. And by the way, you'll have noticed that I had Rage clicked there the whole time. Check this out. Now, if you're familiar with the current way I'm running the build, I get extraordinarily high rage uptime. We have a super wheel here with Battle Trance. If you have very high rage uptime and then Push the Advantage, you can get manually, and could just go all the way around here, take this, get some of these really powerful ones here without even needing to path up there. And something like this could be in store. Oh yeah, not to mention Val Pact right here as well. There's definitely a decent chance that I'm going to do this, at least maybe for bossing. But even if not for bossing, you could just go whoop, whoop, and do that for mapping. Up next, we have Megalomaniac. for which I've created one. Okay, now this is a super highly randomized double or triple anointed jewel, like we have anointed amulets. It will give us 2 or 3 notables, usually 2, on the passive tree at complete random. And guys, when it comes to trying to copy someone else's build one-to-one, this becomes essentially an impossibility. You can, if you have enough currency, you can potentially copy some of those crazy, valuable, from nothing, things like that. But this, don't expect to be able to one-to-one copy this. I just happen to have 3 notables that would be very good for the build I'm running. I'm not expecting to get my hands on this exact copy of a Megalomaniac, because look at how many notables on the tree. It's totally random. So it's very easy to understand how this works. It doesn't give you any special stats other than the ones anointed. It just becomes quite a headache to try and purchase one off trade. Moving on, we have the Heroic Tragedy. This is the most complicated unique jewel in the game. And that's because the randomization potential of this is just into the stars, okay? This randomly gives a different seed, I think 1,000 of potential different seeds for the 3 different type of conquered ones. And I'm going to showcase what this does using PoE2 DB, because the current PoB doesn't actually do what it's supposed to. And long story short, it deletes the value of the small nodes, any of them, and it just gives you substituted values for the notables. It also gives you a different keystone that does some other function, which we're going to look at right now. Here's Heroic Tragedy loaded up in the website, and if I go in to the Timeless Jewel passives, 3 keystones, one transforming your dex into giving armor per 2 dex, another transforming strength into giving energy shield per strength. That's very good for CI builds, and I did that last time. Another gain inherent bonus, no inherent bonus from intelligence, but evasion rating instead. It's good for Queen of the Forest builds, or just anyone who is prioritizing evasion, which in Amazon might be. It gets a little more confusing. Those notables can be transferred to any single one of these. I'm just going to scroll down here so you can see them. They are quite niche. Some of them are a little backwards in the kind of stats they give. But you can see for the build that I'm running in particular, this one would be really good. Increased projectile speed plus freeze buildup, because I'm running a Call of the Brotherhood build. So this one uniquely would be quite strong. But I'm still not very likely or not expecting to even use one of these anytime soon. I can't really foresee there being a way to get your hands on one that is like perfect, so to speak. We kind of can do that in PoE1. We have a separate tools and calculators to research a perfect seed for our build. It's a bit out of the question currently right now. We just haven't uncovered that much about the game, and the community hasn't come together to that extent to give you guys that kind of information. I could be wrong in saying that, so let me know in the comment section down below if you are aware of any resource that is currently acting like a calculator for the Timeless Jewel Heroic Tragedy in PoE2. If you take items down to uniques and go to other, you will see the entire listed populated. And I'm not going to go over any of the other jewels because there's not really any other reason, because they're not affiliated with radius in that sort of sense. We don't need to look at the actual passive tree to understand. We have the Adorned down here. This has been nerfed so incredibly hard since its conception in PoE1 for sure. For instance, the way people usually do this is they craft perfect 2 modded magic jewels, and then they corrupt it for a great corrupted implicit, which we kind of had that last time, but those have been nerfed as well, and it's only up to 100% effect of jewel passives. And then we also lost half the jewel slots, so I don't really suspect anyone doing Adorned this time around, unless they're just you'd have to just have an absolute perfection character maybe to make that work. We also have Prism of Belief, which is extraordinarily easy to understand. It's just plus 1 to 3 levels of whichever specific skill you're running. In my case, if I were to take this jewel, I'd want it to be Twister. But in the case of attack-based builds, quite often it's not that good. In some cases it is. It's primarily just for casters. We'll get more out of that, more effectiveness out of skill level. And the jewel slot could be used for other things in many cases. The last one is Grand Spectrum, okay? Now this one's a little interesting. You need to use 3 of them. And the problem with this is you need to use 3 of them, so you need to have 3 jewel slots. They need to all be dedicated to this. It gives either 2% max life per socket of Grand Spectrum, or all resistance, which isn't all that good, 4% I believe. And then the other one is pretty good. It's 2% spirit. So there are some niche cases where somebody might prioritize spirit, or if you're like giga life stacking, maybe you would do that. Now, I know I'm going to get asked a question in the comments if I don't show this section. How do you search for these jewels? I'm not going to show all of them, but we'll look at Megalomaniac first. You go to pathofexile.com trade, and you can see Megalomaniacs will be completely random. This is the one that people are going to ask about the most because it's the one that's hardest to search. It's definitely the kind of thing you're going to want to live search. And to get this to make sense, you're going to need to allocate whatever it is you're searching for. And I'm glad I show it that way because it needs to be under the enchant tag. And then you can actually find, potentially, a Megalomaniac or two, one of them offline, with the allocated notable you would like to have. Let's say there were two very specific ones you wanted on the same Megalomaniac. Good luck. I mean, probably not going to happen. You're going to have to figure out a multitude of notables on the passive tree that are really valuable, and you should already have some sense of that because you're going to know what is good to anoint. Again, if you're not just one-to-one following a build guide and being completely brain dead about what you're doing, you're going to at least have some familiarity with the build, and you're going to know which other notables are in play, several of them anyway. Certainly not all, but in my case, as somebody who does heavy research on this kind of thing, theory crafting my own build, I essentially have a sort of tier list that I go down, and I will live search them like a count of 2, or maybe, a count of 1 of a certain, high tier list, and then a count of 2 on a secondary search on the count, and so it gets a little complicated on that. But live searching that can really save you so much headache than trying to go through and navigate it. When this jewel was first introduced, we couldn't even live search it at first. It was terrible, but now at least they do have the back end of trade set up to do that for the Megalomaniac. Another one is Metamorphosis, and if you just add this in, you will see that it comes up, and you're going to want to search a specific ring size because you're going to need to be familiar with what ring size fits the passive tree jewel slot you are working with. I showed a few cases. I showed a massive one. I showed large, and I think a few others. And so we can use the text down here. It says only effects. Let's say I want a massive wheel one, only affects massive. That way it will only populate massives. 134 listed. How many actually online? 59 online. Let's say I want one that has decent resist. Okay, not terrible roll range resist because it's only one divine if it's horribly rolled. The massive wheel one being, I think, the most expensive. So I might go down in here and type all res. Oops, all elemental res and chaos res. Let's say I didn't want to settle for anything less than -10 of each. Okay. Well, now suddenly it's 13 divines. So if you want a really good one, you're going to have to pay quite hard for it. But there are some that aren't nearly as expensive, like the medium large. I believe a medium large might have been one of them that I showcased up there towards the top near the monk tree, if I'm not mistaken. So this one's a lot cheaper. From nothing diamond, okay, you're going to need to know which one's allocated. This one's quite simple here. Just say passives in radius. And then you're going to need to know the keystone, the name of the keystone. I think one I selected was Bulwark to get immunity to light stun with the other keystone that was right next to it. And so this is, wow, it's only one divine. People haven't caught on to that one yet, I guess. And you know what? That's going to be a great segue into the last point I'd like to make of this video. Market manipulation is definitely a thing that happens here, and there's a reason why. A lot of build guides, for those of you who maybe didn't even know hardly anything about any of this, it might be because you're following a build guide, a good build that is from a creator who knows what they're doing, and yet they didn't really even include a list of potentially powerful, unique jewel options. There's a reason for that, and that's because the market quite often gets manipulated like crazy whenever somebody promotes some of these more rare jewels. You will have noticed in those searches that I did, there weren't that many of them, and the Megalomaniac, just forget about it. There's no way you can even copy that. No chance. And so I say this as a sort of warning to you guys that don't be surprised if what I showcased here, especially specific things like the heart stopper from nothing, or the massive wheel metamorphosis. I mean, it's already kind of highly valuable. Don't be surprised if the price range doesn't even come close to what you just saw on the screen a second ago, because that's just how it works. There aren't enough to go around, so people get excited to try something. They start exploring on their own, or they follow what somebody else is doing. In that case, particular, especially if it's like a really popular content creator makes a guide and then promotes a really rare, unique jewel, that it just goes to the moon. The funny thing is I used to do that. When I started making builds a long time ago, my builds were incredibly tight, extremely efficient, with extremely specific items, even specific seeds of timeless jewels I would use. And people loved it. The people loved it who were familiar with the build. They would copy it one for one, and they could because I wasn't popular at all at the time. And as time went on, I've had to scale back on how much I promote those sort of things. And you'll notice in my max roll guide link, there is no unique jewel listed in there. Now, I may populate something up for like a super in-game version, but for now, I don't want that kind of heat. No content creator does. So yeah, I'm giving you a video that helped showcase this as a resource. I'm not trying to promote one specific jewel over another. I just want to get you thinking about different things you can do. Hopefully, you will do better than just somebody who purely follows what someone else is doing one for one. You'll actually be familiar with the build you're running, and you'll think of good deviations that will be perhaps even better than what the build creator did, and that can be exceptionally satisfying. That's something I've experienced firsthand when I first started playing the game. I started taking my own step, figuring things out for myself. Very satisfying. And so, if anything, the biggest thing I want out of this video is to help kind of jog you into doing that, so you can start exploring through Path of Building, because it becomes a totally different game. It's like the game outside of the game when you do that. It's very fun, very fulfilling, and I want to give that to you guys. This is a resource. Of course, the build guide's there. But all in all, I just want you guys to dig a little deeper into the game, enjoy it more wholeheartedly, I guess you could say. So with that, the video is now concluded. With that, I will be coming out with a future video, one that is related to some of the questions and concerns from the previous video, which got quite a bit of attention. It's very nice not using a row amount, moving quickly with whirling slash. The current iteration of the build I'm doing is a bit squishy, on the squishy side, and some of you have taken notice of that. And so what I've done is I've begun to try and figure out a little bit more how to do that. I'm very resistant to going up the monk tree and trying to go ES hybrid. There are good reasons for that, for which I'll explain later. But I did showcase some interesting tech with the Bulwark Keystone, and that might be a route I take as well soon. I've already unlocked a couple of the Atlas points, the 8 different Atlas points, I think, for Ritual and Breach. And so I'm going to do the other 2 today on stream. And with that, we'll probably be able to make some content for a future video to help share with you guys, how it went down. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching. Hope you got some good value out of this video. I'll see you guys in the next one.